Hi there, my name is John Penn. I've been with Resolve here for almost 2 years. Actually August 1st, coming up here. I work as an intake coordinator. I love being in the trenches, being the first go-to for people calling in, needing help, bringing them to wherever they need to go to, sitting with the best clinician, the best intern. We have a lot of options like that. And I'm really looking forward to doing the podcast tomorrow with Elevating Men.
Hi, my name is Jessica Doan. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at Resolve Counseling and Wellness, and also the Director of Community Engagement. Something I love about Resolve is our ability to find the right clinician for anyone in the community. I'm really looking forward to talking on Elevating Men because men's mental health is super stigmatized, and the first thing we need to do is talk about it to drop that stigma.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is A.L. Johnson with Elevating Men, and I've got two special people with me today. This is a special episode because what we want to do is highlight one of our referral partners for men who need therapy. You know that we're all about men's mental health, and so these people here, Resolve Counseling and Wellness, do a very, very great job. I took a tour of their office, and I've been talking back and forth with them for the past couple months. Just making sure that there's someone that we want to refer, and I can tell you with 100% certainty, these people are awesome and they do a great job with what they do. And so I'll get off my soapbox. I'm going to let them introduce themselves really quickly. John, how's it going this evening?
Oh, it's fantastic. Always absolute pleasure talking to you. And I do genuinely mean that. I always look forward to our conversations and look forward to this podcast. It's exciting.
Absolutely. Yes. Every time we talk, we say we got a 30-minute meeting and it turns into like 2 hours. So absolutely love it. Absolutely.
I'm frequently late for the next appointment because of that, but I definitely enjoy it. Great problem to have.
So can you tell the people, what it is that you do? I know we had the quick intro there, but what do you do? And just kind of tell people what it's like working with Resolve.
So I'm one of the intake coordinators. There's actually 4 of us, kind of part of the admin team. So we are that first point of contact. Basically, when people call in, they reach out to the website. We take that call. We kind of decipher what they're looking for. Sometimes people don't even know what they're looking for. We ask the questions we need to kind of put them with the right person. It's really imperative that first touch is a very kind person. A lot of people, I think I get a call maybe once a week about somebody that's never done therapy before. It's so common. But we make it as easy as possible. Honestly, within like a 15-minute phone call, somebody's set up, intake forms are sent. And then the process is we describe exactly what's going to happen, the process of showing up, what it's going to look like, how to check in. So then all questions are pretty much answered within 15 minutes. Resolve Counseling, I've been there for about 2 years now as intake coordinator. I said it in the pre-game, I call it here in the clip you played, but I do enjoy being in the trenches. I do enjoy going to customer service is my life. I still actually walk into banks. It's very rare. I'm like the only one in there. I'm about to stick it up or something, but I definitely enjoy it. I love customer service. I love helping people. It's just, my mom was a psychiatrist. I have a huge heart. That's what I'm all about.
Love it. Definitely appreciate that. And I think that first point of contact is extremely important. As a mental health organization, I look at my job as, really opening men up to the idea of therapy. But then when we hand them over, that part of the process is so important, that first conversation, how it goes, how it flows, and how you make them feel. And so definitely appreciate that. Jessica, can you tell them just a little bit more about yourself, some of your background, maybe even outside of Resolve, and how you got to where you are today?
Totally. Before I talk about myself, though, I just need to hype up John a little bit. Our intake team, we could not do the work that we do without them because, like you both said, that first point of contact is huge. If I call somewhere about something that I'm maybe anxious or on edge about, and the person on the other end of the phone either doesn't answer, never calls me back, or is kind of rude or feels like I'm bothering them by calling and having questions about their services, I'm not going to feel safe moving forward with them. And John and our whole intake team does such an awesome job of just being like a friend with boundaries is what we like to say in the field, right? Like you call in and John's like, hi, thanks for calling Resolve. What's going on today? And he seems pleasant and excited to talk to you. So shout out to John and our whole intake team. We couldn't do this work without you.
I had to do it live, didn't you? You had to do it live.
Yes. Any chance I get to embarrass John or compliment John, I'm all over it. So my name is Jessica Doan. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in both the states, Kansas and Missouri. You asked several questions already. My background, some things that I do, how I got here. So I'll try to make that quick because I could take the whole hour just talking about my wild explorations within social work in the field of mental health. I graduated with my master's of social work in 2018. And from there, I worked in hospital social work, and then I did school social work in a few elementary schools in the KCK, Wyandotte County area. I also did juvenile corrections in the Topeka, Shawnee County area. I've done outpatient mental health, inpatient mental health, group therapy, specifically for first responders and military. I have also done, I've led groups in intensive outpatient therapy, which is for folks that just get out of the inpatient hospital and are still needing that extra level of support. And then currently I work at Resolve Counseling, and I am a clinician specializing in working with folks who are 14 and older. I really love working with the LGBTQ population. Gender affirming care is my passion area, a lot of my wheelhouse as well. I also work with anxiety, depression, perfectionism, self-esteem, self-worth, body positivity, body neutrality, basically anything and everything in terms of building a better version of yourself. That's where I like to be. And then I also do, I'm our director of community engagement, which is just a big, long title that means that I focus on business development, education, and community give back. So going into the community is something that I am incredibly passionate about, to have conversations like this, to talk about what even is mental health? What even is therapy? Why is this something that people should take advantage of if they have access to the services? And how can it benefit them? And why is this not just what it looks like in the movies?
Love it. Love it. For those of you that are just tuning in, I've got Jessica Doan and John Penn from Resolve Counseling and Wellness. They're an awesome business here in Kansas City that helps people that need therapy. Let's just be honest. We talk about healing. We talk about having better communities, but it all starts with the mind and our state of well-being. And so if we don't have a healthy mind, if we don't have healthy mental health, it's impossible to do a lot of the things that we seek to accomplish. And so their job is absolutely important. One of the questions I want to start with, so as you know, we are a men-focused group. When we look at the statistics, when it comes to depression, when it comes to suicide, when it comes to sudden death, heart attacks that are stress-related, men are at the top of the list. And so my first question, either of you that wants to take it, why do you feel that is?
I'll take off with that one first. So being a guy myself, it's a little easy to answer that question. I think it's funny. The first time I actually had coffee with Lauren from Elevating Men, we talked maybe for 40 minutes about kind of that stigma of not seeking help. Like, again, rub some dirt on it. That's what we've all been told and raised up. And there's some, part of that. I believe in that. It's good to keep moving forward, but there's got to be a time where you stop and kind of and analyze what's going on. Stress is so consuming, not just physically, but mentally. Gosh, I mean, it even affects your sleep. So there is no actually release at all from that. You just continuously have these issues. So stress building up, it just leads to terrible, terrible things. I mean, mental health is so important. Physical health. I used to work at a gym. Obviously, I stress physical health so much, but mental health might be even more important than physical health. It's kind of a push-pull. You need both of those to be healthy fully. So I think just being able to open up and talk to people when you are stressed, it's really, really important. I think we're told, especially at a young age, gosh, I mean, when you're a teenager and you're really stressed, what do? I mean, if you tell your friends, they probably make fun of you. That's just kind of what we all were raised of. I mean, again, I can speak that from experience. If somebody went to a therapist when they were younger, I mean, some of the friends would think something's wrong with them. Well, it's really not just someone to talk to. It's really somebody, a friend, an ally. It's so important. So I think over time, breaking that stigma is so important. So for heart attack, obviously our what we eat is obviously another whole story right there. But in addition to that, the mental health, you cannot overvalue that importance. You've got to be able to tell that to your children, tell that to your friends, encourage people to go get help if they need help. When someone says they or even thinks that they need help. I mean, they're struggling. If I say I'm struggling to Jessica, she doesn't just say, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm here, and just walks away. It's more like, hey, I'm here. Let's figure this out. There's another whole layer that has to be addressed. And I think over time we're slowly heading that way, but it is a very slow crawl.
It's definitely an uphill battle. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I want to give a shout out to the audience. Gary Newsom, this is a great guy right here. He actually has a podcast called Unbreakable Souls. I'll have to connect you all. But Gary asked a question. He said, how do we break that stigma? Let me go to you, Jessica. How would you answer that question?
Yeah. Gary, way to start it out 10 minutes in with this heavy hitter of a question. As John mentioned, the way that our society, our community, our family systems talk about emotions really makes a difference. So John mentioned the example of like, oh, just rub some dirt in it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? That in itself perpetuates stigma. So that language about having a hard time encourages folks to internalize it, right? Like just get up, just move on. So our first step is going to be acknowledging that men, specifically to this podcast, have exactly every emotion as everyone else. The ironic thing about this is society loves to act like it's only okay for men to be angry. That's the only socially acceptable feeling for a man to show out loud is mad. And so we'll notice an increase in anger symptoms from men that we work with, when in reality, it's actually depression, stress, sadness, grief, but they've never been taught how to express that because crying wasn't okay. And P.S., crying is not the only way to express yourself in a negative, quote unquote, or sad way. And physically, crying is actually really good at reducing stress. So even if you're not ready to outwardly cry yet, a shower cry, 10 out of 10, always recommend. And then lastly, just having the conversations, right? Like the stuff that you all are doing here on Elevating Men is exactly how we begin breaking the stigma, because you're bringing a bunch of folks together in one space and you're saying, hey, we accept you the way that you are. And we also acknowledge that these things have not been talked about with you, about you, for you, and you don't have a guidebook on how to navigate, and we're going to admit we don't either. So we're going to do this together. It's about community, it's about connection, and less isolation for sure.
Absolutely. I wish you guys could have been at the conference last weekend. It was amazing. Oh my goodness. And so we had a therapist there. His name was Caleb Adegoke, and he actually introduced us to the emotion. And so you kind of alluded to that, where sometimes we'll think that our anger is one emotion, but it can be something completely different. You must have one. She must have got one back there. Oh my goodness. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about that just a little bit, please?
I sure can. So yes, of course, I'm a therapist with the feelings wheel in my home. I am not in my office right now. It's a little challenging to see, but what you're going to see on an emotion wheel is in the center here. These are our core emotions. So that's your quote unquote basic emotions. You've got disgust, sad, anger, happy, surprise, and fear. And then each color branches out to give you more and more verbs, language, and vocabulary. I did child therapy for a long time. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. And one of the core foundations of child therapy and mental health with kids is this: giving language to feelings. So yes, I'm feeling angry, but in reality, I'm actually feeling withdrawn, which is under anger, because when I'm withdrawn, maybe anger is at the root of that. Gosh, I could talk about anger for the entire hour also, but I won't do that. There's something else called the anger iceberg. Are you familiar with that by chance?
No, I never heard of that.
Oh, so if you think about an iceberg, you just see one thing at the top, right? So this is your little like ice cap, if you will. And then under the water is everything else. So on top, you're going to see anger. You're going to see maybe this is aggression. Maybe this is someone having a fight, a physical fight, a verbal fight, whatever. What you don't see underneath is everything that contributes to that. So maybe it's hunger. Maybe it's other physical symptoms like tired. Maybe someone didn't have anywhere to go last night. Maybe they're houseless. It can also be irritation, sadness, isolation, rejection, loneliness, withdrawal, pretty much anything. And the goal of that imagery is just to show us that what's showing on the outside in someone from their behavior, their attitude, oftentimes is deeply rooted in a bunch of other things. So as I was saying with men specifically, that anger, that's what's socially acceptable. You have to be tough, right? You have to be stern. You have to be just, no, you cannot show them that you're weak. That word, if I could eliminate a word from our vocabulary when talking about mental health, it would be weak. Because that in itself stigmatizing, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Another quick shout out. So we've got the Fill Your Cup podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is a good man right here. And so somebody else I actually need to connect you with. Hey winners, Ricardo Terrell here. This is priceless. I found through countless conversations with men that there is rarely an opportunity to express ourselves. There's an entire spectrum. That's absolutely true. Coach G, Gary Newsom, he said, teach us on that anger iceberg. I'm telling you, that's what this is all about. And again, Ricardo, there's strength and vulnerability. Absolutely, absolutely. So you said a lot there when you talked about emotions and how actually being able to put a word to it or describe the emotion that you're feeling in an effective way actually helps open you up because you understand exactly what it is that you're dealing with. It's not a vague emotion like I'm angry. It's something more specific like I feel withdrawn. So for people who are in a household together, couples, people in relationships, etc., like what are some tips or tricks or tools for them to maybe help their mate identify what the specific verb is so that it's not so broad and ambiguous?
Do I get to take that question too?
Yes.
I just threw that out there.
I'm like, I love that. So I also do couples therapy at Resolve. Fun fact. So at Resolve, we see individuals, couples, families, children, any age group from the age of 2 through the lifespan is what we like to say. But couples is something that I do a lot of work with, family dynamics as well. It's so ironic that you would ask this question because the answer is going to be way more simple than you're probably expecting. This is not rocket science. You do not need a master's degree in social work for this one. The easiest way to do this is to make talking about feelings a part of your regular routine. I especially recommend this with families that have children. Every day at dinner, if your routine is to eat dinner together at the table, normally folks are like, oh, tell us about your day. What'd you do at school today? And the kid says, good. It was good. Well, what was good about it, right? Having the emotion wheel or the feelings wheel on your fridge in your kitchen, bringing it to the dinner table, passing it around, everyone picking an emotion. I've also heard of some businesses doing this in their employee meetings. So they'll start the meeting out by having the feelings wheel up on the presentation and everyone selecting where they're at that day on the wheel. I also really I have 2 check-ins that I really like to do with partners or families. And the first one is called the head, heart, gut check-in. So what's going on in your brain? What are you thinking about? What's been on your mind a lot? Is there anything weighing you down in your thoughts? How do you feel in your heart? And then what's your gut telling you need to do? That's a really great way to also align your decision-making process to see if your decisions or the things that you're thinking you're needing to do next are aligning with your values. And then the other check-in is way more basic, and it's literally just how are you mentally, physically, and emotionally. Throw in spiritually if you would like. But when I ask you, well, why are you upset? You seem stressed. What's going on? And you're just like, oh, it was work. Okay, well, let's break it down further, right? How are you doing physically today? And you're like, I'm exhausted. I'm worn down. I feel like I can't keep my eyes open. I have a headache, so on and so forth. Then, all right, well, what's on your mind, right? What are you thinking about? Well, my boss had a really hard conversation with me today and I can't stop obsessing over it, right? I can't stop thinking about the one negative thing he said and I don't know what this means for me. Well, okay, let's combine the two. How are you feeling emotionally? I'm fine isn't an answer here, right? Because we've already started investigating. So you're probably going to say, well, I'm anxious. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I feel defeated, disappointed, right? the more we ask our partner, the more info we're going to get. But if we accept fine as an answer and that's your norm, we're never going to get that depth.
I'm going to ask you this, John, because you're on the intake side, so you're that first touch point. Um, how do you go about breaking the ice? Because I believe that there's still a barrier or a hurdle at that point. So a person has accepted, yes, I need therapy. They've reached out, they've made the phone call. But at the same time, there's still a lot of apprehension. And so how do you help people move past that apprehension to really get the help that they need?
Yeah, I mean, that's happens almost every phone call, actually, of them. Again, I give them props and give them a lot of love for actually making that phone call. I mean, some people take months, if not years, to actually reach out to get help. It's amazing how much time passes, and then sometimes an issue becomes a much, 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 much bigger issue before they reach out. And just knowing the process is a big part of it. Just answering questions. A lot of times they don't know what they're going into. Like, hey, I want to talk about couples. Like a lot of times one partner really wants couples therapy a lot more than the other. How do they broach that question with the other partner? I think just asking questions, making a safe place. Hey, this is what it's going to look like. It's not just going to be a group environment necessarily. It just can be the three of you talking. It can start very, very slow. If people have questions, maybe want to do a phone consult with a clinician. At Resolve, we do a free up to 15-minute phone call with the clinician. It gives you the opportunity to actually talk to somebody, the person you're about to see, and make sure that it's a good match. You like the personality. Otherwise, if it's not, it's okay. You can say no, and I'm sure we'll talk about that much later. But asking those questions is very, very important, and seeing what that apprehension is. It could be something different every single time, but being able to answer those questions, tell them what the process looks like, maybe even show them on the website what the clinician looks like. This is their specialties. Like, that helps answer a lot of those unknowns. I think the biggest stigma or just the fear is like, I don't know what I'm getting into. What is this going to be? Are they going to analyze me? Are they going to put me in a white jacket? Like, it's not like that at all.
Right.
For the most part, it's just very good people trying to help. And so answering questions, I say, is that answer. A long way of saying that short answer.
So I want to stay there just a little bit. For those of you that are just tuning in, we are talking with Resolve Counseling and Wellness. Okay, I'm going to flip those two every single time. But we were talking to Resolve KC. They're a therapist group here. They have, for the last 2 years, been voted in the top 10 by the KC Chamber of Commerce. So they're definitely top of the line. They're great at what they do. John, so you were just talking about the intake process and how you help people get over their apprehension to therapy. My question is, you guys have a whole roster of therapists, and so it's not just one or two. I mean, there's a ton of you guys. You have 3 different locations. And so is there anything that you do as far as matching them initially? Is it certain questions that they ask, or how do you determine what therapist to at least give that first shot?
Yeah, they might start with a simple question like, hey, I'm thinking about therapy. And then, okay, that's great. Thanks for reaching out. What part of town are you located in? Kind of find most convenient location for them. If they have to drive all the way across town, that's something that they might attend, but very well just might make excuses not to show up, either whether for the first session or ongoing. So find locations convenient, whether doing in person or virtual. There's both options, which is absolutely wonderful. Sometimes you can meet with a clinician in your own house if that's what you feel more comfortable with. If that helps you open up, then great. We'd be happy to meet with you. I always tell people on the phone or via email. We also have an email option. If some people do not want to talk on the phone, they can email the website, and we have an option to ask questions. I want to speak with a therapist, and then I just start, and I give them an option, either email or text. Some people, it's a texting world, and we're in it right now. Some people do not want to answer the phone. They will not pick up the phone at all. We give all those options. So again, meeting them where they're at is kind of what I always try to focus on. Again, if they're really high energy on the phone, I try to match that energy. So it makes it more comfortable for them. If they are real laid back, you try to be laid back as well. You try to make it comfortable for them. Ask those questions, and you ask what kind of specialty. So again, you have one therapy. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more of what you're looking for? I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Okay, like I have different therapists that may have different modalities. Depression, anxiety, transition, suicide ideation. There's all these different therapists. We have individual, couples, family. We do some groups from time to time. We do play therapy, which is youngest kids. We do parent-child interaction, which helps parent kind of interact with children and have a clinician kind of in their ear giving them advice.
Okay.
Like, there's so many different ways we can do this. And again, you're never, like what we'll talk about, I'm sure eventually, is that you're never stuck with one thing too, just to try to make them as comfortable as possible. And then again, go over, okay, we schedule this appointment, typically try to schedule a follow appointment to make sure they can be seen shortly after that. And then I send them intake forms via email. They fill it out all at home. Their own safety. They don't fill it out, in a lobby with everyone around. They just fill it out in their own comfort at home. It goes right to the clinician. So the clinician can go ahead and read it and honestly have questions ready for that first session. That's really helpful. Instead of just kind of, we've all been there before, kind of almost the white coat syndrome where you're in a doctor's office and they're sitting there just looking at your intake forms or whatever the form, they're reading it and they're about 20 feet away from you. Again, that's not the way to get started at all. We try to make it a warm environment. The video Resolve is such a great place. Amber, our owners, put a lot of time and effort into it to make it as easy as possible and comfortable. We've been in places before, it's just white walls, and that just feels like a doctor's office. And so that is not one place to open up at all.
Listen, for those of you that are watching, I've been there a couple times, and it's like you're at home. Like it really is. They have the most comfortable environment of any therapist organization that I've seen in the city personally. So kudos to you guys on that. And so, Jessica, I've got to ask you this from a clinician's perspective. What actually makes a good client-therapist relationship?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions. So thanks for asking that. So John mentioned modalities, John mentioned location, in different struggles or presenting problems like anxiety, depression, etc. All of those things are incredibly important. Like, please don't lose sight of that with what I'm about to say next. But I always tell folks that I work with that if you and I don't have a relationship, a therapeutic rapport is what we call it, then any modality I throw at you isn't going to matter. If you don't trust me, if you don't feel safe with me, if you don't feel like I get it or I hear you or I'm trying to hear you, then it doesn't matter if I am the most well-versed, highest credentialed, have the certifications out the wazoo. If you don't feel safe, this really is almost like a personality match. So in that first session, John's talked about the intake process over the phone. The very first session with a clinician is also called an intake assessment. And that session is really going to be about me as the clinician showing my style, my personality, my vibe, if you will, while also gathering information about the client. And I start the session by saying just that. I go through all my legality things such as informed consent or HIPAA, letting people know that I am not going to break their confidentiality unless they want to hurt themselves or someone else. But after I get through the boring business stuff, as I like to call it, I then talk about how I may not be the best fit for everyone because I say the F word a lot, or I'm a little bit rough around the edges in terms of I'm fully tattooed and my office is covered in rainbows and glitter and whatever else. And that might not be everyone's jam. And that is okay, because if you do not feel comfortable with me as a human being from those first few interactions, what makes either of us think that you're going to feel safe telling me your trauma? Telling me things that you've never told anyone before. The amount of times I've had clients say, I haven't even told my husband this, or nobody knows that this thing happened to me when I was 8. I can't count the amount of times that I've had conversations like that. And 9 out of 10 times, the reason that information is disclosed is not because I was doing some fancy therapy modality. It's because the person on the couch across from me felt safe. And that I cannot reiterate that enough. And safety, many of us don't even know what emotional safety feels like.
Oh man. Wow. That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you haven't felt it at home, growing up, in your day-to-day in the workplace, et cetera, and then you go into a therapist office and now you're having to open up, feel vulnerable, and allow yourself to just be okay with that. That's going to be a big jump for some people. For those of you that are just tuning in, we're talking to Resolve Counseling and Wellness. Let me give you their information. And so if you like what you're hearing and you say, hey, I actually do need to talk to someone, I've got some things that I need to work through, you can find them online at kcresolve.com. That's kcresolve, resolve.com. Phone number 913-735-0560. 877. Hey, if you guys are just now tuning in, we're live. And so at the end of this, you'll be able to go back from the beginning and catch everything because they've actually dropped some really good nuggets here. And I want to make sure that you pick them up. And so we're at the halfway mark. I want to pivot the conversation just a little bit as it relates to access. And let's talk about the one thing that everybody's apprehensive about when it comes to therapy: money. It costs money. And, that's one thing that we do with Elevating Men is we actually help to subsidize the cost of therapy for men who cannot afford it. And so when we talk about access, I remember when we had our initial interview getting to know each other, you guys stated something that I thought was amazing, that the business model that you have is almost like Robin Hood in a sense, where you're able to basically put yourself in locations where there's higher income that allows you to subsidize in areas that may need additional help. And one of you expound on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I'll take this one, John. So I jokingly was talking about that at our breakfast meeting a few months ago of money is the number one topic here, right? With some of those reservations for therapy. And something at Resolve that's really important to us is recognizing the privilege that we hold as as a white-owned business. I think that that's something that's really important for us off the bat, just to acknowledge and to own. And then how can we use the privilege that we have, not only in where we're located, but also the resources that we have access to. So we have 35 clinicians on staff and anywhere from 12 to 15 interns that are in their final year of their master's program preparing to be a therapist. Amongst those 40 some odd people, we have so many cool resources, and it would be absolutely not ethical for us to just harbor all of them for people in Prairie Village that can afford those services, for people on the Johnson County area, right? So something that we like to do that Andrew is referring to here is because we are located in areas that have the resources to pay out of pocket for their therapy services, that allows for us to then have some wiggle room on the back end to be able to provide reduced session rates or to be able to do community partnerships. So we actually have several incredible community partnerships, ranging anywhere from, we have a licensed professional therapist that is in an Olathe school, one time a week, offering free sessions to students. And she is there every single week and sees a caseload of kiddos at school to increase accessibility and reduce the barriers to care. We also, actually, that same clinician this summer is going to a summer camp that is for underserved youth. And the summer camp specifically, I think she said they raised like $40,000 or something buck wild.
Wow.
To sponsor kids to go to camp for a week. And that camp at it's in Lacine, Kansas, so it's a little bit of a jaunt, but they bus the kids to the camp, they stay overnight, and then we have a provider that's there that does group therapy and individual check-ins at the summer camp. And that's something that we're able to provide as a community partnership, either free or totally reduced for the camp itself. So anything that we can do to connect with agencies that have the need, but don't necessarily have the resource, or maybe they have the grant funding, right? Maybe they're a nonprofit and they have the grant funding from the state or from other mental health grant partnerships, but they don't have the people, they don't have the staffing, they don't have the specialties. When we talk about lower income areas or lack of resources, we see a ton of trauma, right? Well, trauma is a very specialized thing to treat. And there are special modalities that require trainings for clinicians to be able to treat those things effectively. If you don't have staff and you also don't have staff that are trained, that's not serving the community. So we will bring ourselves into the community and partner in their spaces if they can't make it to us. We recognize a lot of our offices aren't on the bus line. So we're actually talking about our next location. And one of the number one things we're talking about is how can we get this on public transit? Well, Prairie Village is not really on public transit, right? And so we're looking more in that inner city area to be able to say, okay, let us come to you. We've also talked about, this is like a wild idea, but like therapy on wheels, what that could look like. I'm an ideas person, but anyways, yes.
I've got to actually get you in on a conversation with that. So one of the state representatives, we were having a conversation, and that is a real initiative that's going on. And so, yeah, we'll have to talk about that off camera.
Mhm.
Makes me think of like
No,
Scooby Doo, just like the bus shows up and now all therapists pop out.
right. Absolutely. So, sticking with access, telehealth, can you talk to us about that for rural areas? You know, like you said, people that aren't on the bus line, if transportation is a barrier, what does telehealth look like for them?
Go ahead, Jessica.
Sure. Yeah. So telehealth is an option for anyone. And something that I really appreciate about telehealth is there's actually several facets of why that increases accessibility. You mentioned rural communities. So think about teens, or not even just teens, but people that are out. I talked about Lacey in Kansas, right? In the middle of wherever, where the closest mental health provider would be in the closest suburb, which could be 45 minutes to an hour away. One thing we know through research and data, and actually how we have chosen where we've placed our locations, is that most people are not willing to drive more than 30 minutes to go to a therapy appointment. So if they're outside of that 30-minute window, it makes it much harder for us to capture them. But also, they don't have people that necessarily understand where they're coming from. I talked about how I specialize in working with LGBTQ folks. Think about being a queer person in the middle of the country where you went to school with 5 people and that's your whole town, right? Everyone knows everyone's business. You may not have people that are educated or well-versed in things that you're struggling with. And so telehealth does allow for you to have access to a much wider net of providers. But something else that I really appreciate about it is that, let's say you live in Lee Summit, but there's a provider at our Prairie Village office that their profile is everything you're looking for. And you're like, ugh, I don't know that I can make that commute. Like that's not something that might work for me realistically. That's great. We can still connect you with that Prairie Village office therapist, even if you are not able to come to the Prairie Village office. And then lastly, I see a lot of people on telehealth when they move to college. That's like something that gives me the warm fuzzies. I actually have several going away to college here next month, and they get to continue to work with me depending on their location. And it's incredible to get to move to that new life chapter with someone that's familiar when everything in your world is changing. Telehealth really, like, I'm not going to lie, I was a practicing clinician during the depths of COVID. And when we were sent home the first time, I worked at a hospital, but I did outpatient therapy. And I was like, I do not know how to do therapy on camera. Like, this is weird. How do I do this? And as time has gone on, I am incredibly grateful for that because it's increased access. But also, if I have someone who's sick or who gets off work late and they're going to be too late to their appointment, I can still see them. Or I have people who just had babies and they can't come in, or just had surgery and they can't come in, but I can still work with them and continue that care through telehealth.
And also just people that don't even have a car. People that don't have a car is a huge thing too. I mean, that is a huge stressor if you have one and then you lose it. Again, they're still able to go ahead and meet with somebody, especially, again, if they are really tight in money. The internship program is there for that reason. They can meet virtually. It's hard, like Jessica says, it's hard to build rapport, especially when somebody moves away. Gosh, it is, talk about another stressor. The clinician that you really opened up with, the person that really got me, that I can go to when I had all these tough things come up in my life. Now I live 2 hours away. Virtual still creates that bridge and allows them to continue that therapy. It's a huge, huge importance for the accessibility.
So I got a text message, and to the person that just texted me, if you're watching this, I need you to get on YouTube or Facebook and leave a comment there. But
Yes.
their question, they wanted to know, on average, how many therapy sessions does the person generally need to really work through their trauma? What's recommended?
Ooh, I also love that question. I would say my biggest catchphrase for therapy and mental health is that it is never a one size fits all model. So we talked in the beginning about how not every therapist is going to be the right fit for you and that that's okay. And that's because it's not a one size fits all model. Same thing with number of sessions. When I have someone coming in for that initial intake session, I'm learning a little bit more about what's bringing them in now, right? So what's going on in this moment? Why'd you make the call this time? But I also talk about how we have a lot of catching up to do because what's going on now is likely not an isolated event. And what I mean by that is that the way that we think, so the way they're called learned behaviors, the way that we think about the world, the way that we have natural responses to certain triggers or incidents, the way that we interact with other people, our communication skills, our ability to regulate our emotions, all of those things contribute to whatever is happening right now at the peak of it. So I will hardly ever put a number on it. And I know you're not going to like that answer, and that's okay. I do also tell folks in the beginning, in a perfect world, let's pretend time and money aren't an issue, none of those things. I would love to see someone at least 4 times in a row weekly. So if, again, perfect world, I like to see someone once a week for 4 weeks to really build a foundation. Who are you? Where do you come from? What's your life look like today? What are these things that have continuously come up for you over time? And where do you want to go? What are your goals? Something that's incredibly important to find in a therapist is someone who is really clear and direct with you about your therapeutic goals. If we don't know what we're measuring as success, we're literally never going to know when we're done. So in that second or third session is when you're going to create what's called a treatment plan with your provider. And that's when you work together to say, okay, what I'm hearing is that you wish that you could handle your anger better and that this is causing a lot of problems in your relationships. So the goal is going to be emotion regulation. How are we going to know that you're working on emotional regulation or that you've gained skills in that area? Well, you're going to step away from an argument 3 out of 5 times in 6 months or whatever, insert random numbers here. But we create really strengths-based, client-centered goals because this is about making your life worth living. It's not about my expectation. And so really, in order to know when you're done is going to vary by person. And if I'm being super honest, I don't think that therapy is something that is ever finished. I don't mean that you have to be in therapy for the rest of your life, but I do mean that things are going to continue to come at you, and it is so nice to have someone in your corner that understands your history. And healing effing hurts, and it's not linear, and it gets worse before it gets better. And so you're going to come for those first 4 sessions and you're going to be like, wow, I feel like I got ran over by a truck. And that's because you've been bottling all of this up, and now you're coming and sharing all of this information maybe for the first time, or addressing things that you have buried deep into your soul. And now we're digging it up. But we have to name it to change it and feel it to deal with it. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, I think in addition to that too, things come up. Did you want to add something to that, John? Yeah, sorry about that. I cut you off there. No. Cutting off the podcast host is perfect. Good idea. Okay, no. No, things come up in sessions like Jessica was kind of referring to. You can go to therapy. Hey, I'm working on relationship stress. I'm depressed right now. And then as Jessica asks these questions and kind of start talking about things, you might start digging up, hey, listen, that I had a loss in my life that really hurt, and that you didn't hear about that in 3 sessions, 4 sessions. All of a sudden, the 5th session comes up, and it's like, wow, that actually makes sense compared to whatever you've been going through. It's something that kind of follows you. So again, like Jessica said, it is a moving target. You can't just put a number on it. It's easy. I wish we could just put a number on it, and at that point, you're great. But things come up throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your life. You might have a loss in your family. You might have a huge fight. You might have be called out by the boss. You might even lose your job. A car, you can't pay your bills. Like, there's so many things that could come up, and to have somebody to talk to in that circumstance and kind of figure out a game plan is so important. And so again, you might feel like I'm doing great, and then all of a sudden a trigger happens and you're right back where you're at. What was working before is not working. So then Jessica, other clinicians kind of figure out, let's go at this a different way. So it's hard to say. It's just life changes. That's a beautiful thing about life, and also kind of a horrible thing about life at times, is that, again, things are going great and then whoop, something changed. But it can go the opposite direction too. Things are going bad. Oh, hey, I'm doing great now. So again, life happens. You want to have somebody along with you for the ride.
Certainly, certainly. For those of you that are just tuning in, we're talking to KC Resolve, Resolve Counseling and Wellness. We've got Jessica Doan here and John Penn. They've been giving us a lot of wonderful information as it relates to getting therapy and the help that you need. If you've heard something today that makes you say, maybe I do need to give them a call or talk to them, their phone number is 913-735-0577. You can also find them online at kcresolve.com. And so we just talked about how much therapy someone needs, and we learned and found out today it's going to vary from person to person. And for some people, it may have to be an ongoing thing, right? And so when we talk about access and barriers, again, money is an issue for a lot. You guys do what you can as far as reduce services for people that need it. You also connect with organizations like Elevating Men who subsidize the cost. But when you talk about this long-term thing, I've got to bring up the big I word that everybody hates when it comes to therapy: insurance. So when it comes to people who have insurance and they say, okay, well, I want therapy, what is my insurance going to do when it comes to that? What has been your experience? Because one of the things that we do at Elevating Men, we have 4 pillars: research, advocacy, support, and education. Under the advocacy piece, we are literally working to make change at the government level on some of these things. And so what are some of the issues with insurance that you see from your side?
I'm going to let Jessica take this one too, but I want to caveat by saying that Andrew is an insurance salesman. So we're step on some very, very kind of calm area here and kind of see how it goes.
Be raw and real, please.
No, I actually think that this was the part of the conversation in our first meeting that turned it from a 30-minute discussion to a multi-hour discussion. And I am going to narrow in so that I don't ramble, because I'm really good at that. If you haven't already gathered, I'm paid to talk for a living. So from a clinician standpoint, so I'm a social worker. That means that I am licensed and I am governed under the ASWB, the Association for Social Workers. What that means is that I have a code of ethics that says what is ethical as a provider and what is not. Well, one of the things that insurance requires of a clinician is to put a diagnosis. So that is, it's called an ICD-10 code from the DSM. So the DSM is the fancy manual that clinicians and psychiatrists use to look through symptoms and determine what diagnosis someone may or may not qualify for based off of the requirements in the DSM. Insurance requires a clinician to put a permanent billable diagnosis on someone's chart within the first session. I'm just going to let that sit for like 2 seconds. So I am supposed to meet you for 45, 50 minutes, 60 if I'm going over like I always do, and decide based off of this much information that you've told me and knowing me, a complete stranger, for 45 minutes, I'm supposed to decide what medical diagnosis should be billed through insurance. If that doesn't make you feel icky, I would just think about that for a sec. The reason that feels super unethical to me as a provider is that we just talked about this, right? Like, there are reasons for behaviors. If I am just looking at behavior that is self-reported from the client or the parent of the client, and they say, well, I'm anxious all the time. Well, I have panic attacks. Well, I watch TikTok and now I think I have ADHD. I don't have nearly enough data to actually give an informed diagnosis, but in order for it to be covered by the patient's insurance, which is important to me for them to not be put out, I have to pick between potentially giving a diagnosis that doesn't feel like I have enough information, or it getting rejected by insurance and my client ending up with that bill. the other caveat to that is insurance also dictates based off of that diagnosis how many sessions they'll pay for. So I just got done rambling about how it can vary. Some folks, it's very solution focused. I want to work on this. I had one car accident. I need to work on this trauma response that I have. That's it. Okay, cool. We can do EMDR in 6 sessions and you can be out of here. But that's not the average therapy client, because so many of us have complexities in our life and our identity and our families, our circles, so on and so forth. And so when insurance says, oh, you diagnosed this person with generalized anxiety disorder in the first session, we're going to cover 6 sessions. Okay, well, at the 6th session, my client's like, oh yeah, P.S., this is my 3rd marriage. And I actually got married the first time when I was 16, and my parents signed for me to marry my high school sweetheart, who was also, insert trigger warning, my abuser. What? Like, and now insurance is like, oh, sorry, they're good. They're good to go. And that really is challenging from a clinician standpoint, because I am rapport building for many of the first sessions. If you're tuning in towards the end here, I was talking earlier about how one of the main reasons that someone is a good therapist for you is not necessarily the credentialing they have, or the modalities they work with, or how many certifications they have under their name. It's, do I have a relationship? Do I have rapport, which means safety and trust and the ability to talk about hard things in a way that I don't feel judged or shame? That is gonna take a minute to build. And so when insurance says, okay, well, in 6 sessions, you should know how to deal with your anxiety, feel safe enough to talk about it, and have all of the skills to reduce that. That's just not real life. It's just not real.
And one thing that I hate about it, so with me working in insurance, specifically life insurance, I hate situations where someone has had, they've been labeled with a mental health disorder, and now it prevents them from getting life insurance. And like you said, you could find out 2 sessions later that that's not even the real diagnosis. And so it's a really horrible part of the system that we really want to work to break down. For those of you that follow Elevating Men, be looking out. We're working on a town hall event where we're going to be bringing lawmakers together along with mental health professionals and the general public, so that we can voice these issues and get the right bills on the ballot to really make change, because that's so important. So important. Oh man, we're almost to our time. I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, it always does.
We're almost to our
does.
time here.
But I will also
give a
say,
quick
though,
shout
the
out
insurance.
to,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
what was that? I'm
I
sorry.
was saying insurance. I cut you off again. I apologize. Insurance is still,
No.
again, I do agree with Jessica 100%. But again, insurance, again, we want that to be a wonderful thing for us. And it is. Again, it can be medical insurance helping with these bills. Again, medical bills, those stack up incredibly fast. The cost of everything is unbelievable. Throughout the day-to-day life, we all feel it, all the stress that adds to it. Again, we got to release it. But at the same time, I really hope insurance, again, steps up and kind of allows therapists to kind of help with that conversation. That town hall you're talking about is absolutely wonderful. Have the dialogue. Again, insurance, I think, is built there it is a business. It's there for profit, but it's also there to help out people out. And so, again, go buy insurance from Andrew. That's my telltale right there.
There you go. And I'm on the life insurance side, so I don't have anything to do with these health insurance companies and how they do us when it comes to therapy, but I'm definitely fighting for us. Shout out to Latrice Tucker. She's a big supporter of ours. She's always supporting. I love her spirit. She's a great person. For those of you that are watching, make sure that you share this with your family and your network. If they're looking for a therapist, I recommend KC Resolve. You can go to kcresolve.com. You can also call them at 913-735-0577. We're at the mark where we have 5 minutes left, and so I have to ask my famous question that I ask everybody. And so, John, I'm going to start with you. I think you know what question's coming.
The hot seat.
But you get a genie lamp, you rub it, genie pops out. It says, what are 3 things that you want to change in the world? You can relate this to therapy. You can relate this to whatever you want to. But you have 3 wishes to make the world better. You can't use them on yourself. What are the 3 wishes?
Oh man, that might take the whole 5 minutes there. That might be rough. Okay, Jessica, I'll leave you some time here. No, I'll talk for the therapy part of it too. I think just in general, I love people to be nice to each other. We're all in this together. We're all having feelings. emotions. We're going through life. We have the ups and downs. Like, there are strength in numbers. Is why I absolutely love Elevating Men. Creating a safe place for people to talk is so important. For therapy, I always say accessibility, know where you can go, how to go. Affordability, make sure it is affordable for the client, and also affordable enough that the clinician can pay their bills and stay around. Again, turnover, burnout is a huge thing. Having that ally there and staying there is so important. And then acceptance, being able to go ahead and talk about therapy again, and just talk in general. Like, if somebody's struggling, a friend can pick up on that, a family, anybody, and could be just a random person on the street. We can help build each other up. It's something that I feel like we're all in our own world, and I get it for sure. We can only see through our own eyes, but at the same time, again, helping each other out. Positivity helps so much. You can change someone's life just in a simple opening a door for somebody, saying a nice compliment. You don't know what that person's dealing with. Negativity is 10 times as worse. One negative comment can bring down an awfully good day. So just be really good to each other. So I think I added about 6 things to that, Andrew.
Thank you. And I agree. All of those things would make the world a better place. Jessica, you have your 3 wishes. What are they?
My 3 wishes, of course, all 3 go back to systemic problems that I see, not only as a therapist, but also as someone in marginalized communities of my own, and then doing the work that I do with community partnerships. But the first thing is that I wish that mental health was as just common as physical health. So perfect world, I want everyone to have a yearly mental health wellness checkup. So just like you're supposed to have your physical before you go to school for the year, I want us to include mental health in that as just the norm. This is just your yearly cleaning at the dentist. This is just something we do. And tied to that, healthcare for all would be awesome, to where those types of things are, it's not you have to choose between getting your teeth cleaned or paying your car insurance bill. That's ridiculous, right? Like, this is something I get really angry about, in the sense of, it's really bothersome to me as someone who on paper makes quote unquote a lot of money, and I'm still having to have those debates with myself of, I really should go get this cavity filled. Or a parent was talking to me yesterday, and she was going to have to pay $2,000 to get her child tested for ADHD to then get services at school. $2,000. That's ridiculous, and that's not obtainable. So healthcare for all, for free. We all can go to whatever doctor or specialist we need to, and it's built into our regular routines. So that's 2 things built into one. Is we do mental health as a regular thing. It just is a part of our processes. People have free healthcare. And then the last one is education. I truly would love for everyone to have the option to receive higher education. This is something that I mentioned in the very beginning. There's a lot of privilege within the ability to go get a graduate degree. And in order to be a therapist and a clinician, I had to get not 1 degree, but 2. And we joked the other day about how I continuously have to pay money to keep my license. That makes it ridiculously impossible for folks who have a lot of passion about this work to go into the field, because they can't afford our education system. You sign your life away at 18 to thousands of dollars in debt. I didn't know what I was signing up for, and now I'm going to die with that debt. So Andrew, I'll get some life insurance for my debt. But I really wish that education was something that people had access to, and it was a choice based off of desire versus based off of affordability.
Love it. I love those wishes. I've heard like 100 different wishes, and those are great. Those are definitely great. For those of you who have liked what you've heard, you feel a connection, you know that you need help, or you know someone else that needs help, the information that you need is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can visit them at kcresolve.com, or you can call their offices at 913-735-0577. If you're just tuning in because we are live, make sure that you go and watch the replay. We're going to post this tomorrow afternoon. It'll also be on the A.L. Johnson newsletter. I want you guys to share this as much as possible because we really do believe that to heal our communities, we first need to heal ourselves, and therapy is a part of that process. Before we go, do you guys have any just last words, final thoughts, or do you feel like you got it all out?
I mean, I can't speak for John, but if this topic is something that brings a lot of questions, concerns, or just interest from the folks that you connect with at Elevating Men, we would love to come back and chat some more and take those questions and have maybe a little bit more of an interactive dialogue to be able to really give folks access to the information. I was at a doctor's office yesterday and talking to the staff, and they were like, well, what's the difference between a therapist and a psychiatrist, and what's this and what's that, and so on and so forth. I have a huge passion for just sharing this information that shouldn't be gate kept. Like, this is free knowledge, and I want to share that with people because it's incredibly difficult to navigate the systems as they are, as you've heard. So let us help you and let us give you some of that info. Info is power, knowledge is power, and that's what we're all about.
That's right. That's right. John, any final thoughts?
I just say make sure you take time for yourself. What it comes down to, I think we're all so busy in this world. Take some time for some me time. It's so important, and then be there for other people. Again, reach out, create that bridge so that if somebody is not doing well, that bridge is there. They can go ahead and reach out and talk to somebody. Hey, listen, seriously, just again, anytime you're going to reach out to me, let's go to a park, hang out, wherever you meet them where they're at. Again, there is strength in numbers. I love the fact you're doing this grassroots movement, elevating men, having breakfast. That's a way to a man's heart for sure, and very easy way for people to go ahead and open up. So again, they're having these places where people can talk about what they're feeling, their emotions, building each other up. That's so important, and that's going to obviously translate not just in those little meetings, but obviously the rest of their days.
Yes.
Absolutely. I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. You guys could be doing absolutely anything in the world, but you decided to be here with us. And for that, we are absolutely grateful. For those of you that are tuning in, make sure that you mark your calendar for Monday night. We have our Monday night live stream where we have our panel of guys talking about men's issues, men mental health. We talk about, oh my gosh, marriage, relationships, family, physical health, the whole nine. But we actually are starting a book club that starts the week after next. And so be looking out for the registration link. It's going to be powerful. And so our very own A.L. Boykin wrote a book called 10 Reasons Why I Refuse to Say I Love You. And I've read the book already. I can tell you it's amazing. But we're going to open up that book and go over it over the course of about 4 or 5 weeks. And we're going to have some really good conversation that's really going to open people up. So want to make sure that you guys don't miss that. We always have our monthly prayer breakfast every second Saturday of the month, so be looking for that as well. And we have the town hall event that's going to be coming to you. I cannot wait because I do believe that we're going to make some incredible change as it relates to therapy and access. And so for all of you that are tuning in, we appreciate you. Again, like, comment, share. We're going to continue to interact with you all in the comments afterwards. And Casey Resolve's information is on the bottom of the screen. Make sure that you capture that. For those who may not be able to afford it, don't forget that Elevating Men does help subsidize the cost of therapy services for those who need it. So we appreciate each and every one of you, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Andrew.